Ever notice how, like, two people can look at the same thing, the exact same thing, and just see something totally different? It's kind of wild when you think about it.
It really is.
We're diving into that whole perspective thing today, exploring excerpts from that document you sent over.
Yeah.
The one grappling with, well, a pretty big question, honestly. Can a figure like Christ really appear, like truly appear and be recognized in our modern world?
It's a question that, well, makes you think. And this source, it dives right into that tension. Like right off the bat, it asks, can Christ appear or is he bluffing?
Whoa.
That whole push and pull between belief and doubt, it really sets the stage.
Totally. And what's really got me thinking is how the source, it seems to separate Jesus and Christ. Like there's this one line, look at Jesus, does Christ appear? It's like, are they two different things?
Yeah, that distinction it's really key here. Think about like history for a second. So many figures, they weren't really understood in their own time.
Right.
Like Van Gogh, for example, died practically unknown. But now, his paintings are like masterpieces.
Yeah.
So, could a Christ figure be here, present, active even, but not like immediately recognized for what they, represent?
Okay, so let's unpack this whole writer concept the source keeps bringing up.
Right.
It mentions Judaism, Christianity, Islam, even atheism, all connected to this figure.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that?
Right. Well, it's important to remember the source, it isn't talking about a literal person on horseback. You know what I mean?
Okay.
The writer, it's a metaphor, a powerful symbol found like across different belief systems. It represents a pivotal force, whether that force is driving belief in a divine order or pushing back against it.
Okay.
It's about that central figure.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me.
Okay.
The source actually says this writer basically is history itself.
Yeah.
What could that possibly mean?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the source, it connects this metaphorical writer to the forces that drive major historical shifts.
Oh.
The rise and fall of empires, revolutions that reshape society. They often revolve around like deeply held beliefs, ideologies, right?
Right.
The writer could be seen as the embodiment of those ideas, the driving force behind those monumental shifts.
Okay, I'm starting to get it, but it makes you wonder if this writer is so central to everything, why isn't there like universal recognition? Shouldn't it be more obvious?
That, my friend, is the million-dollar question. And the source, well, it tackles that directly when it delves into the tricky territory of dreams, delusions, and the dangers of misinterpreting signs.
Which brings us to that whole rapture discussion.
Right.
The source doesn't seem too keen on taking those kinds of visions literally, does it?
Not at all. It uses the rapture example to show how easily we can misinterpret signs, especially when we're looking for a specific, maybe even dramatized outcome. It's almost like the source is urging us to look beyond those Hollywoodized versions of profound events and search for a deeper meaning.
So how do we avoid like falling into that trap of misinterpretation?
Well, the source suggests the real danger lies in something far more subtle, more insidious, the mark of the beast.
Okay, now that's a phrase loaded with baggage. What does that even mean in a modern context?
Right.
It can't be about a literal mark.
Right. Exactly. The source isn't talking about a physical mark. It's talking about being so trapped in your own closed-mindedness, so convinced of your own interpretation that you fail to recognize the truth even when it's staring you right in the face. That, according to the source, is the real mark of the beast, the inability to see beyond your own preconceptions.
So you're saying our own ideas about how Christ should appear, what that should look like, might actually prevent us from seeing the truth.
It's a possibility the source raises. And it connects back to this idea of the writer being more than just a figure on a cloud, which, let's be honest, is a pretty outdated image, right?
Yeah. It's making me rethink things, for sure. But if we shift away from those kinds of grand, obvious signs, how do we even begin to look for truth in the world? What are we even looking for?
That's where the source makes a pretty bold claim. This writer, if they exist, has to be more convincing than Jesus Christ was.
Hold on. Isn't that a contradiction? If this figure is supposed to be so convincing, why isn't there like widespread recognition? Why are people flocking to them?
That's where things get really interesting. Maybe, just maybe, the source is challenging our very definition of convincing.
So are we talking about like a whole different kind of convincing here? Not miracles or mass appeal, but something else?
Exactly. Maybe true conviction, the kind that really shifts history. It happens on a deeper, more like individual level. The source seems to be kind of pushing us beyond those, surface level expectations.
So not a stadium show, but more like a quiet one-on-one conversation that ends up changing, like everything.
Precisely. And that gets to the heart of what the source seems to be suggesting. The most profound truths, the most powerful encounters, they might not be the ones that make, headlines or draw huge crowds. They might unfold in the quiet moments, in the subtle shifts in understanding.
It is a thought-provoking idea.
Yeah.
Especially when you think about the source's final question, the one directed specifically at Christians. How can they believe in this figure's importance, in their eventual return or influence, yet not perceive them in the world around them?
It's almost like a challenge, isn't it? A call to look beyond the expected, to question the assumptions I hold about what a figure like Christ should look like and how they should act in the world.
Yeah.
Like, if we're only looking for a specific image, waiting for a certain kind of spectacle, are we missing something truly profound unfolding right in front of us?
It's like we're so focused on finding the right face in the crowd that we miss the message being whispered, like right in our ear.
Exactly. And that brings us right back to your initial point about perspective. We tend to see what we're primed to see, what our, beliefs and experiences have prepared us for.
So to circle back to that idea of the rider, if you're looking for a warrior king, on horseback, we might miss the quiet revolutionary, the artist challenging the status quo, the teacher sparking new ideas.
Precisely. The source seems to suggest that maybe, just maybe, the most convincing Christ figure, it isn't about like spectacle or outward signs at all.
But about something far more challenging.
Yes. Something that makes us confront our deepest assumptions, that prompts us to reconsider how and where we look for truth in this complex, often confusing world.
This is a lot to process, honestly. It's like you said, a whole new perspective. If we set aside those preconceived notions, how do we even begin to look for truth in this new way? What are we even looking for?
That's the ultimate question, isn't it? And I think the source would say the first step is letting go of that need for easy answers. For a Hollywood style like revelation. It's about cultivating a different kind of awareness, one that's open to the unexpected, to challenges that might shake our deeply held beliefs.
So instead of looking for a figure on a cloud, maybe we should be paying closer attention to the people and ideas that make us uncomfortable, the ones that force us to confront our assumptions about the world and our place in it.
Exactly, because maybe, just maybe, that's where real change, true revelation actually begins. Not in the grand pronouncements, but in the quiet moments of self-reflection, in the willingness to question and learn and grow.
It is a challenging idea, for sure, but also incredibly hopeful. It's not about passively waiting for something to happen. It means we have an active role to play in recognizing truth and shaping the world around us.
And who knows, maybe in that process of questioning and searching, we'll discover that the rider isn't some distant figure, but someone much closer to home than we ever imagined.
Wow. Okay. After all of that, I think I need a moment to process. This deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about, maybe even changed how we see the world around us.
It's a good reminder that the search for truth is ongoing, and that sometimes the most profound discoveries happen when we least expect them.
So much of what we've talked about hinges on this idea that truth can be found in, like, unexpected places. That maybe the most profound encounters, they happen when we're least expecting them. But how do we cultivate that kind of openness, that willingness to question what we think we know?
It's a process, that's for sure. And I don't think there's like a one-size-fits-all answer, but I do think the source, it points us in an interesting direction. It challenges us to consider how our own like biases and preconceptions might be limiting our view, blinding us to the truth even when it's right in front of us.
It's like we're wearing these blinders, so focused on what we think we're supposed to see that we miss everything else.
Exactly. And those blinders can be, cultural, religious, political. They come from all sorts of places. The key, according to the source, is to become aware of them, to question why we hold the beliefs we do, and to be open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
That's not always easy, though, is it? Admitting we might be wrong. It's almost like we have to be willing to be a little uncomfortable to embrace the unknown.
Absolutely. Growth, it rarely happens in our comfort zones. And the source, it really seems to emphasize that. It's this idea that if a figure like Christ were to appear today, they wouldn't necessarily fit neatly into our pre-existing categories. They might challenge the status quo, disrupt our expectations, even make us question the very foundations of our beliefs.
Okay, so if we bring this back to the writer metaphor, maybe the question isn't so much who is the writer, but what forces are shaping our world today? What ideas or movements are challenging our assumptions and pushing us to evolve?
Now you're getting it. The source seems to be urging us to look beyond the surface, beyond the obvious figures and events, to see the deeper currents of change that are shaping our world. It's about recognizing that history is happening all around us right now, in ways we might not always recognize.
And that we have a part to play in how that history unfolds.
Exactly. By becoming more aware, more critical thinkers, we can start to see those subtle shifts, those moments where truth reveals itself in unexpected ways. We might even find ourselves becoming part of those shifts, agents of change in a world that desperately needs it.
Wow, this deep dive has really taken us on a journey from questioning our perceptions to rethinking the very nature of truth and how it reveals itself in the world.
And hopefully it's left you with more questions than answers, because ultimately the search for truth is a deeply personal one, and it's a journey that never truly ends.
So for anyone listening, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep your mind open to the possibility that the most profound truths often reveal themselves in the most unexpected places. And maybe, just maybe, you'll discover that the writer you've been searching for has been right there alongside you all along.